Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. This week we have a very special guest. She is an author, number one bestseller of both fiction and nonfiction, a metaphysical researcher, a paranormal teacher, an intuitive coach, a psychic medium. She has been featured on several documentary series that can be found on Amazon. Her written works include The Sky in June, How to Talk with Spirits, City of Redemption, and The Timeless Counselor. I'd like to welcome June Ahern to the show. How you doing, June?
Doing good. Thank you.
Good, good. Glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So where are you joining us from today, June?
I'm right outside of San Francisco
Oh, okay.
at a little ocean side town called Pacifica.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area of the country you live in. Yeah,
Yeah, it really is.
yeah. I almost moved out there once. I lived out in Phoenix, and I'd almost moved to San Francisco. Just things just didn't work out job wise for it. But so I guess we could get started with start at the beginning maybe. Now, did you have a near death experience? Is that kind of what kicked things off on this journey of yours?
Yeah, it really did. I was a child of the 60s and we were all interested in, different kinds of spiritual paths and uh, paranormal, occult. And then I had a near death experience in a car accident. On the way to the hospital, I expired for just seconds, but I always say it's seconds that completely changed my whole life and what happened thereafter that. It took a while. It took a while for me to physically heal because I had gone through the windshield. This is before seat belts, gone through the windshield, but when I came back in, I tore off a lot of my face. So I had to require plastic surgery and just all of the accidents, all of the things that happened to my body during the accident. And all the time I kept having this recurrence of what happened for me. What I believed is that as I always said, I went to heaven, and at the pearly gates they rejected me, and I came back, and my life changed thereafter. My interest of where I should go, more from a feeling of I'm really interested in this, rather than I had this awakening. I really didn't look at it as an awakening.
Now, did they tell you why they rejected you? I mean, was it?
I, I guess it just wasn't my time. And it was a very nice rejection letter. It wasn't like, go back. It was like, oh, nice to see you. Okay, well, not right now. Not right now. And then we're doing, with their hands, and were just waving me away. It was my grandparents. Not right now, June. And
Well, you definitely had a lot more to do, didn't you?
yeah, I had more to do unknown to me at that time. What was I going to be doing? What was this all about? And it took me many years. You have to figure, back in the 70s, people did not talk about near-death experiences the way people talk about them now. People did not talk about tarot readings or any of that as openly as they do now. And I came from a very strict Catholic household, and certainly you didn't talk about things like anything of the occult. Dr. Raymond Moody came out with a book, Life After Life, around 1978, I think it was, 77. And it wasn't me that found it. It was my father who found it and gave it to me, which was really a surprise because he was a very staunch Catholic. And that's when I was able to talk about that I had gone to the other side and came back. And so it took a long time. It was like 7, 8 years before I even spoke about it very carefully to a few people, not openly. I didn't come out and talk about it to everybody as we do now.
Now, how soon after the accident did you notice maybe a change in your abilities or your sensitivity to things?
Well, at first I just thought it was deja vu's. So I had the accident, and about 6 months later, I had to go back to work. Now I'm only 19 years old, 19, 20 years old. And I didn't go to college because my father thought girls shouldn't go to college. They're just going to get married. Why waste the money? So I had a job right out of high school, and I went back to the work, and I would see things that were going to happen. Like, for instance, before I left work one day, I saw that a friend of mine as I came down the stairs, was going to be hiding in this little corridor and come out and surprise me. You know, this was going through my head as I'm getting ready to leave work. And I walked down the stairs, just laughing at my own thoughts. And he comes out of this little corridor and greets me. And that was like, wow. And these things started happening. And then I had a visitation from a friend up in Oregon, that I had gone up there and made friends with this guy. And I had this image of that he came to me, appeared to me. And I thought, well, this is very strange. I mean, I actually really think I'm talking to this, you know, a friend of mine. And the day after, his mother called and said he had committed suicide. So these kind of occurrences started happening. I became interested in reading the tarot because I had had a reading before this accident with just the playing cards. And the reader had said to me, oh, you're going to have an accident, and there's going to be two men standing at your side, and you have to make decisions of which man it is. Well, I had kind of a boyfriend, but I went out with this other guy. And that's who I got in the accident with. So talk about getting caught, huh?
Wow. And they had told, you were told this prior to the accident then?
Yes. By a woman, a friend of a friend's, that said, oh, let's go over. She reads, you know, the playing deck of cards,
Yeah.
not the tarot. And we thought it was fun, you know, all these young ladies with their wine bottles going over to get a little reading. And yeah, that's what happened within about 6 months' time, even maybe a little less than that. So I wanted to know how she did it. And I bought a book on how to read the playing deck of cards. And I started to learn how to do that. So I started reading for people, because one of the ways you learn is to actually read for people, is what I believe in. And, you know, learning the symbols, looking at my book. And then I heard about a school in San Francisco called Orpheum, which kind of led to the Learning Annex. I think most people know about the Learning Annex. Anyway, so I saw tarot. I knew what the cards were, but I didn't know a lot about them. So I took this class, and the teacher kept me after a class one day, which was not unusual. I was kind of a naughty student anyway, all through school. And she said, you know, you're meant to do this. You're really good at this. And so I started reading for friends, people at the bus stop. I would read for anybody who wanted a reading. And that's how it all started. I mean, it just kept growing on it. It's almost like, what do they call it? Organically.
Uh-huh.
It just kept growing.
So you would use these cards to read, and then did your psychic abilities grew from there?
Yes, and you know, really a really I don't want to say good reader, because there's a lot of good tarot readers, but anybody like an astrology or tarot or whatever you're using, you use them as a tool to center your thoughts and get some clarity on what you're doing psychically, and then you add your own psychic energy into it. And I used to think it was the cards that told me this, but as I studied and I went to other workshops and studied with other teachers, I began to understand that it really was me, and that the cards were a tool, and a great tool. I love the tarot. I still study it. I'm studying the Kabbalah and the tarot right now. And what is this, about 50 years later or something? And so I recognize it as like in a dream. You get symbols, you get messages, you get images, and then you have to interpret the dream. So that's how my psychic abilities kept growing, through reading the tarot cards.
Now, when you go to a location or you're doing your work, are you picking it up through feeling? Are you, well, you did say that you did mention that you did see some things, so that some of it's imagery, right? And then
Yes.
is there some audio there? What all can are you dealing with?
So we're talking about the paranormal investigations that I do at the Haunted Bay. Is that the one?
Yeah, but just in general, like your
Oh,
psychic
how do I
abilities.
pick up the information?
Mhm.
Well, it began more as clairvoyant, meaning I would see things happening in my mind's eye, more than I felt. You know, I would see. And then as I did more readings and my ESP, my psychic awareness grew, I understood that I began to hear messages. And some of these messages could appear in my own voice, and some of them appeared in voices that were outside of my own voice. And so I understood that I was also clairvoyant, and then I'm clairaudio. At times I'm a clairsentient, meaning I do get feelings about things. Like I might get a feeling and say, well, let me follow this and see what kind of image or color or symbol comes from it. Where do I take my feelings? Your feelings down here in your lower body, your gut reaction. People say I have a gut reaction, and how do I translate that into usable language? It's difficult when you have feelings in a reading, especially because we have to translate everything. I mean, I may get a picture of one time I was reading for this man, and he was a very dapper man, dressed nicely, and I said, I keep seeing little chickens running all over the place, like you're going into the hen house and you got no shoes on, it's dusty. And he laughed. He said, when I was a little boy, I lived on a farm. We were very poor. And I'm thinking, I shouldn't tell this dapper man that I see him looking like a little ragamuffin. And so things come to you, and you just have to be willing to take the risk and say, this is what I'm picking up.
So your work now seems to focus on helping people to understand their psychic abilities, and as well as like just understanding the paranormal in general. Where's that inspiration come from, and what are some of the things that you're doing now to help others?
Well, years ago when I was doing my readings, I really didn't want to be seen as a medium. I wanted to work with people with the here and now. I didn't want to keep going back into, hear spirits and all that. And that must have been my own issue. Maybe because I went to heaven, I was kind of still a little reluctant. And as time went on, I worked on two murder cases. Well, I actually worked on more cases than these two murder cases with law enforcement. And people say, oh, wow, like that's fascinating. And I say, actually, it's really a horrible thing, because you're watching someone being murdered. You're helping them cry for help. You're seeing their body. So it's not really fascinating. And I realized that I had this ability, but I didn't want to really use this ability. Well, in time, spirits kept coming to me and saying, would you pass this message along? Would you tell this person this or that? And then I started doing, on Halloween in the 80s, I started doing these special yearly events of a little seance with the whole Halloween thing. And it was kind of fun, and I go, hey, this is kind of fun. And I would give messages. And so it kept growing like that. People said, well, would you come and do a seance at my house? And I was like, no, I was kind of reluctant, but I did it. I have, as I say, I have better conversations with the dead than I do with the living. The living they asked like, well, his eyes weren't brown. They were more like a hazel green brown. And I'm like, oh, his name's not Albert, it's Alfred, so
Right.
it grew like that. And I did it. And then I was invited by Ying Lu, who's a producer of The Haunted Bay. She invited me to come and do a paranormal investigation. And I had already been doing that on my own with people for years, going to their houses. And I said, well, yeah, all right. And the only reason I said yes, I said no to her first invitation because she wanted me to do the Zodiac, the killer, the Zodiac in
Yeah.
San Francisco. She wanted me to do that. And I said no. Too negative. So she asked me to come to the Condor Club in San Francisco. It's a really infamous strip joint. It's a place where they actually really took off all their stuff. And I thought, oh man, growing up in San Francisco, I always wanted to go down there to Broadway. But nice girls didn't do that. They didn't go into strip joints then.
Right.
They do now. But back then, oh my God. So that's why I went. And it turned out really interesting. And then she asked me to do another and another. And it's up on YouTube, and then Amazon Prime. It's up on Amazon now. So it grew. Everything I did always grew on its own, it seemed to me. That's how I looked at it.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the one from, I think it was called Eagles Hall.
Oh, yeah. That's one
Yeah.
of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how you got into that kind of work. Then you were invited.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. So what were some of the experiences there, like on your walkthrough, and some of the things you were able to go through, without maybe giving away too much on the video for people that haven't seen the video, but.
Well, I did a walkthrough down in the San Francisco, kind of at the Bay Area. where the ships used to come in and all of that. I walked around the streets there at Upright, and I just walked around and said what I picked up, what I believed was there, rather than looking only at the physical building that was existing now. In my mind's eye, I would see other buildings. So I would describe, one of the things that I asked the producer to do is, I will come on the walk, wherever you're going. Don't tell me anything about it. Some people said, oh, she probably looked it all up. I don't look it up. I don't. All I do is meditate. I usually pick up everything, almost everything before I get there to begin with, or many things. And I walk around and I just, what do I pick up there? Do I pick up an entity? Do I pick up an event that happened? Like on the walk that I went in San Francisco there. And I picked up, there was a police station there and there was a kind of a riot and all of that. Well, Ying couldn't find that kind of historical fact at first. And then she found an old map. She went to the library and she found it. She went, oh my God, I finally found it. And there had been a police station exactly where I said. And all it was
Oh,
on a
wow.
very old map. So, that's, we walk around, see what's there. Most of it is pretty reasonable. I don't want to go places really that is, like known to be really negative entities. I asked Jing, don't take me there, but lo and behold, some of the places have really negative entities
Uh-huh.
that are living there, and I have to deal with it, and
And
I
now,
do.
why don't you want to deal with the negativity? Is it draining? Is it
It is,
just
well, it's both. It is draining, and I don't want to take the chance that it will attach and come home with me. I
Mhm.
don't want it, because there's such thing called attachments, and they happen. And I've recognized them in people when I used to do readings, and I'm retired from doing private readings now. And it's a lot more serious when you're attached than people think. I mean, it really does take your health, and it disturbs you mentally and emotionally. And so I'm very cautious, with where I want to go. Unfortunately, we did a couple of places and it was very negative entities. And I did a lot of self cleansing, after. I actually had an attachment at one time, not necessarily from a building, but some of the things that were occurring. And I had to work to get rid of it.
Now these negative entities and these entities that attach themselves to people, why is that? What are they? Are they spirit that have lived a human life at one time? I mean, what?
Some of
Why?
them can be,
Hmm.
some of them can be absolutely, some not very nice, I guess you call evil. I've kind of got issues about evil and good and all of that, but very negative people, murderers for one thing. And they have not left. They won't leave planet Earth. They won't transition over. They just want to stay here.
They
They're
just choose to
miserable.
stay.
Yeah. And I tell you the truth. If this did not happen to me, because I am a skeptical person.
Hmm.
If this did not happen to me, I would probably look at someone and go, yeah, okay. Or show me,
Right.
that's why I like getting to do the homework and find as much historical proof, which is not easy, as she can.
That seems like a miserable existence to me. To
It's a
know
miserable
how to live on,
existence.
to just be here, miserable, attaching yourself to
Yeah.
human.
And wanting someone else to be as miserable as you are.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
that's
There are also entities that, and I can't answer you enough. I'm not sure. I don't believe there's some entities that exist, like down in Jamaica. When I went down there, I was brought there to do readings and do some talks by Jamaicans. And there were some entities that were not human, and I call them, or they're called low grade entities, not just me. And they're also referred to as vampire entities. So they are not of human form, and they will attack people. And you'll see that in hauntings, very serious hauntings, and where they actually enter into a person and they take away, as I said, their whole body, their health, it's like The Exorcist. We can watch it and be scared, but there's actually documented stories, or a story that people have had this kind of entity come into them. People call it the devil. perhaps it is the devil, but it's certainly a very dark entity. And I don't even want any part of it, to tell you the truth. I stay away from that as much as I can.
I wonder, where do these things come from? How do they manifest, or
I,
what
I
created?
really, is it a vibrational force of evilness, that goes around the world? I don't think it's too hard to. I mean, if you look at it like this, people that get into heavy drugs and they start doing drugs, there's a sense that they're losing the soul. They're darkening their soul. They become very vulnerable to other people, like, say, a pimp. So this young girl starts getting into drugs, and this pimp comes and he begins to destroy her life by putting her out to work and beating her. And so it's a negativity. She put herself in a vulnerable place by beginning to take drugs. And maybe she's taking drugs because she had a terrible childhood. I'm not saying one way or another, we're not talking about drugs. But so if you can look and see how people actually, there are bad people in the world, period. I think we could all recognize that. There are pedophiles, there are murderers, there are just really bad people that will ruin your life. And there you are going along, and somebody comes and starts a really bad rumor about you. Dylan, what if I start telling everybody, I get off the show and I said, oh, he's this, he's that, and it starts growing. I get my social media and I start talking about you, and I begin to really enter into your space, right? And cause you havoc.
Yeah.
And that's like these entities are. They want to make your life miserable. They're dark.
Hmm. And this might be a little sensitive subject for you, because I know you had said that you didn't, really like working with this, but can you talk a little bit about the work you did with the police department?
Well, the first case I worked on, I didn't really even know about this woman. I started having dreams about this woman being chased through her house with a murderer after her, beating her, stabbing her, killing her. And then they pointed to a friend of mine. In the dream, I was pointing to a friend. So I called my friend in the morning. I was really distraught. It's a horrible experience. I said, I had this thing about this woman. She said, oh my God, I just heard the other day that my friend's, her, a sister thing had just been murdered in Oakland, California. And so that's how the first thing came around to be. I didn't know this woman. She came to me and showed me the whole murder thing. And so I went there. I drew pictures. I gave information that there's no way I should have had this information. And then the sister went to the police and gave them all this information. And so they began to work. The police began to investigate over what I'd say. So we really did work through the sister, the living sister, about the woman. And she would be the communicator between the police and me, because I didn't want to get entangled with the police.
Right.
They're not necessarily very easy to work with, as I would soon find out from another murder case that I worked on, where I did get involved with the homicide detective and the DA from the cat that was, prosecuting or wanted to prosecute this guy. So the second one that I worked on, murder case. I've worked on missing children and stuff before with the police and that, and that's what wasn't as bad. The second murder case, a client, I read for the woman twice over a course of a couple of years. And then her sister-in-law came to me, called me one night about 10 at night. Now, I know some people think that's not late, but me with a little child, I was already in bed. And for some reason, I answered the phone. And she said, my sister-in-law's missing. She didn't come home after work. She didn't come home. And so I became involved by first drawing a picture and saying, this is the man that took her. And if you don't find her really soon, she will be dead when you find her. And so all of the details that I gave were passed on. And eventually the homicide detective came and began to question me, a lot of questions. Oh, there's a lot of questions involved, and you feel like you're being interrogated.
Right.
You do. I felt intimidated, for a child from the 60s, we didn't quite trust cops.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with.
And so it went on, and eventually the DA came with him, and I described where she would be found. One of the interesting things about that case is my son was about 3.5, almost 4.
Mhm.
And he started giving me he said, Mommy, this lady, and he started talking about it on his own. I didn't ask him. And so at one time I recorded him, little tape recorders we used to have. And I didn't tell the police that he said it because I didn't want my son involved. So as I say, I took credit. And some of his stuff was way better than my stuff. And he was so right on, man. He gave details that I did not even get. And I
So
lost that.
your son's sensitive too, then?
He's very sensitive. When he became a teenager, he completely went into denial. If there's any time I wanted him to help me work with something, I had to get down on my knees and beg him that I would lend him the car keys or something like that.
Mhm.
He just wanted to let all of that go. He wasn't interested.
What do you think about that? It does seem to kind of run in families, doesn't it?
I believe it does. My mother was, she would have dreams, and her dreams her dreams would come true.
Mhm.
But again, in a religious household, you didn't go into that kind of stuff. It was really forbidden. You didn't say,
Right.
I can forecast things. And so she kind of kept it. She would read our tea leaves. That's one thing she did. That was okay. And in the morning, growing up and here in the United States, but we were immigrants from Scotland, we drank tea. So she would read our tea leaves for us, and that was always fun. She was a good mother.
That's good. That's great. Um, so what are some of the stranger things or entities you've come across in your travels?
Well, I think it had to be the one in Jamaica, was one of the very strangest. Defenestration building in San Francisco was strange, but the one in Jamaica tops it all. And again, I was doing some readings in a very well groomed man, handsome man. Oh, to me, it was older then. I was like 40. He probably was in his 70s. Came to me and said his wife was really ill, and he had gone to New York with her. He himself was a doctor, and they went to New York, and that she had cancer. Nobody could cure her. And she had said that she was being attacked. And would I come to his house and see if I can get rid of what was attacking her? Now, Dylan, I had never done anything like this before. I worked with the police. This was about it was after my first book came out. So it had to be about 1993 or something. And so I was very reluctant. And then my host that was hosting me said, well, why don't you go? He's a good friend of mine. He's a very nice person. So I went. Now, this is July in Jamaica. And so it's hotter than, hell. And so I go in, and as soon as I walk in, I get all the hairs just raise up, and I felt cold. And I walked into the house, and as I walked through the living area to the kitchen, there's a room off to the side, and I don't know what it is. The door's closed. I said, I have to go in this room. I went in that room, and it was like walking into an ice locker. It was a porch, like just a covered in porch, and with food up there, like shelves and stuff with food cans on it and stuff. And it was a horrible experience. I was freezing. I felt faint. As a matter of fact, I almost fainted. The man had to hold on to me and take me out the room. And I just said, oh my God, there's so much going on here. I felt the smell. It smelled like garbage. And the house didn't smell like that. Just this room smelled like that. It smelled like garbage. So I went in. He said, well, I'll come into my wife's room. So I went into the wife's room, and it was the same thing. Now everything was closed. She was under a mountain of blankets. Now I'm talking about 100-degree weather or so down here in Jamaica, and she's under there. And as soon as I walked in, I started to get attacked. And again, if it didn't happen to me, I would not even think that it could really happen. I was feeling like I was being slapped. My brother used to do the wet towel thing and hit you with it. And that's how it felt. I was being slapped. I was being punched. It was just a horrible experience. And and the room, it felt like, again, the odor, the stench. stench is a better word for it, coming out of the room. And I said, be gone, get out of here, you evil things. Well, they didn't disappear. I went over to the wife and I was really getting slapped. And I said to the wife, in between being slapped, I said to her, oh my God, there is so much evil in this room. And so I did yell again, and things quieted down a little bit so I could sit and talk to her for a while. She had bruises on her and she was very sick. Now, again, they had said she had cancer and everything. I have not been trained to be an exorcist. It's not even something I'm interested in. And I wish I had taken pictures at the time, because I actually had bruises when I left that house. And I didn't. I was shocked. I was in shock. But yeah, it was terrible. And so if anybody asks me, that's the worst thing that in the paranormal world I ever experienced.
So how did they get rid of it? Were you able to recommend them anything, or you don't know?
I said, move. And they said, we can't, this is their home.
Yeah.
These people are in their 70s then. This is their home. They're not going to move. I did get in touch with a woman, one of the hostess that took me out there. I did get in touch with her after a short period of time. And I said, I really don't know, you can call it a priest, a Jesuit. I think it's the Jesuits that do the exorcism. One thing I did learn there, and I carried it forever, and then later I read about it, is that these kind of entities are often attached to water, like a little stream of water that's going by, a river, especially if it's under the house or near them. And I asked them that. I said, do you have some, water that's going by here? And they said, yes, it's not far from the house. And that's where I learned that. It's almost like everything I learned through experience, and then I read about later.
That's interesting.
As I said, things are so much open now. They weren't all that open back there unless you went looking for it.
Well, water can hold energy, right?
Absolutely.
And I think they've actually proven that it can record memory too. It can hold that. It can hold memory.
Yeah, the Japanese have done some great scientific studies on the water. Yeah, that's true.
That's
or even tears.
Yeah. So can you touch a little bit on your book, How to Talk with Spirit?
Well, I wrote that book because a client who became a friend PM me that his angel visited him and said that I should write this book on, how to talk with spirits. Now, he had been to some of my seances before, and I had said no. There's so many books out there like it. I did not want to write another book. I was done. By then I had written one nonfiction, my first book, and then 2 novels and some screenplays. I said, nah, I'm pretty much done. I'm retiring from readings and I'm not going to write anymore. So we went back and forth about several times. He says, well, don't be mad at me. I'm just telling you what my angel said. And finally I said, okay, Chad, I'll write the book. I'll make it a little ebook. And so I started to get into it, and I thought of all the experiences I had and the questions that people would ask me. And I just kind of played with the idea. I thought, write one of these little tiny ebooks that they say, oh, just write an ebook and you'll get to be known as an author. I didn't care about any of that. I wanted to please Chad. And I sent out a notice to clients and students and family members saying, if I wrote this book, what would you want to know? And I got back tons of questions, even from people that didn't know me, but they heard that I was asking for questions from other people. What did they want to know about the paranormal world? What did they want to know about how to communicate with spirits, how to communicate with their pets that have passed on, how to get rid of negative entities in the house? So I don't know if you saw my book, but after the introduction, the first chapter is all these questions. Now I condensed a lot of them because a lot of them were very similar,
Right.
And so I answered all those questions, and then I went into different chapters. Should you go to a seance? What will you expect? What will happen? How do you avoid, crooked ones? Should you go to a medium? Should you go get a reading? Should you do it by yourself? And I know that people will do it by themselves, but when we're in grief, we and this has happened to me too, you can't, you're grieving too hard. So I gave all the how-to, how you could do it and why you would do it and what kind of rituals would you do it and how to protect yourself, how to create a protective place so negative entities cannot get into you, and how to go ghost hunting. Ghost hunting is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's, I find it interesting that you write both fiction and nonfiction. Is there some truth or even some life experiences that go into your fictional work?
Oh yeah, yeah. The first book. Here's the biggest problem I have with the first book. I named the little protagonist June because some of this was about how things. My first book was
I
first
noticed
titled.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that ruined me for ages. Saying we can't use this if you used your name. I'm like, ah. So I should have said, but you know what? I wrote it. It's out there. It's very favorite. You know, it's a favorite novel for a lot of people. I first wrote it as a screenplay called "Catholic Girls Make Good Witches." And an author friend of mine said, "Oh, you'll really limit your audience if you do that." And so she said, "You should write a book for the screenplay. Why don't you write a book?" So again, I said, "Well, how long is that going to take? You know, I'm a Gemini. I don't have time for this kind of stuff." Anyway, I wrote it. I put in some of the family history, some not family history. It's kind of it's a fiction. I guess you would say it's a little bit of an autobiography in a fictional framework, kind of an idea. So I
Okay.
use some family history and some and fiction.
Yeah. That's that's interesting. That's neat.
I think if you write, you should write for yourself. You should write for yourself and what it is you want to say. If you want to sell it, then you should really then go take classes and have other people tell you how it works and how it doesn't work.
Hmm.
I did a little bit of both, and but you should really write for yourself. That's what I found out. You know,
Right.
if you're going to write to please other people only, that's a whole different. Then that's your profession. That's what you want to get into, and you better get ready because you better be tough skin when you put
Right.
your stuff out there. I learned, and I'm tough, and I was always a tough chick. But
Uh-huh.
you have to really be tough to deal with what's going to come down when you put your work out there.
It's not easy, is it?
No, it's not easy.
Okay, so since you've had a near death experience, I guess I want to ask you, what are your beliefs in the afterlife and maybe even reincarnation?
Well, growing up in a religious household, you believed that there was an afterlife, so that was kind of instilled in me. Uh, and then after my near death experience, it was very different. I thought you went to heaven and you sat with God and everything was rosy and everything was beautiful and, da da da. Or you went to purgatory. If you weren't that good, that's probably where I would have ended up. And then you went to hell because I'm not that bad. So I knew I wasn't going to go to hell. And I didn't realize it. How clear you would see the people that you love. I mean, I saw people that I didn't know in person. There were relatives that were gone that I didn't know, and I only knew them from photographs, but I saw them clearly. I heard them. My grandparents. Now, I did know my grandfather.
You
I
see
met
them
him as
in human form?
yes, yeah,
That's
yeah. They
that's
didn't
neat.
they didn't have wings,
Right.
but the serenity. Now, I meditate, and I have some sort of serenity,
Uh-huh.
but nothing. It is like it's bliss. That's how I experienced it. Bliss. And the beautiful energy of light, and not burning lights where your eyes hurt, just beautiful brightness and people laughing, people having a good time, serenity. That's what I experienced. And that's why I wanted to go in further in there. And I was, as I said, rejected. I'm kind of being facetious, but I kind of was good. No, by June, then I woke up in the hospital, getting ready for surgery and all that. But
Hmm.
do I believe in it? I do. I question everything all the time. I question what I do all the time. When people say
Right.
to me, "Oh, you're phony," I go, "You think so? Yeah, why?" Because I want to find out. If I'm
Right.
phony, tell me, because maybe I'm more crazy than I'm psychic.
Right.
I do think psychic people are got a little on the edge there. You know, so do I believe that there is an afterlife? I believe, as I studied, and I'm a Rosicrucian and I study with them. It's a scientific metaphysical group. It's not a religion. I believe that there is dimensional places. I believe that when our spirit leaves this body and returns into part of the universal flow, there
Hmm.
is absolutely continues to be experiences in
Hmm.
different kinds of realities. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do believe.
So when you say universal flow, you believe in kind of a oneness as well, um,
Yes,
like a combined consciousness of energy,
I do.
for lack of a
I'm
better
really
term.
interested in all of the cosmos and the planets and dimensions, that we go
Mhm.
into different dimensions, flat dimensions, second dimension, we got a little more. I mean, when you look at it and you read about it and you study it, it makes more sense, even from a rather, and I'm not a math person at all. I couldn't even hardly get algebra. I did go back to college on my own.
Right.
But it makes so much sense that the science and the metaphysics, how close they're becoming
They are. They
more
really
and more.
are.
More and more.
Mm.
They can do these with computers, with all of these apps and everything. They're able to say, yeah, you know what, this isn't so weird. Things do happen.
Yeah, they're going to eventually prove it. Maybe not in our lifetime, but they're going to prove it.
Yes, they're
Mm.
getting real close. I'm
Yeah,
telling
they
you.
are. They really
Yeah.
are. Do you have family members and people that you know still come visit you and speak with you?
Yes. Yeah. I had to make a decision recently. Really, I mean, like this past weekend, my cat, my vet said, your cat is so ill. There's nothing we can do.
Oh,
We recommend that you euthanize her. Well, that was on Saturday. Today's Monday. That was on Saturday. And I said, well, I want to take her home. My husband's there. Let me take her home. They said, okay. We made an appointment for today. So I began to ask a couple of my metaphysical uh, on the other side, that we studied together and we had a lot of beliefs together. So I asked them to help me with this. And I had one come by and say, oh, Junie, I'm with you. That was my friend Linda. That's how she would talk. Oh, Junie, don't worry about it. We woke up today. The cat's eating. She's moving around, and we canceled the appointment. And so I did. I asked for help. I said, "Please, please help me." I meditated on it, and it's to let go of your pets. Anyone who's had a pet knows this and
yeah,
knows that.
it's
And
not
so
easy.
we decided. My husband and I said, "You know what? Let's not do it today." Now she
Mhm.
is sick. She's got cancer. We get it, but let's not do it today. And then that's what the spirit on the other side, my friend Linda said, don't worry about it, Junie. She'll be okay for now. For now. So I've got the for now. And for now, it really did work. I woke, as I said, this morning, she jumped up on my lap. She wanted to be, whereas she did not want to get on my lap, which was real unusual,
Right.
and she jumped up on my lap. She wanted to stay there. She was purring. So
Oh,
Linda was right. My friends on the other side.
yeah. Sorry to hear that about your kitty.
Yeah, well, she's
It's tough.
17. I asked her to
Uh,
wait till she was 17, and she turned 17 a month ago. So, you know,
sounds like she's had a good life.
she's ruled the house.
Mhm.
As I said, my husband used to say, "Good night, honey," and I'd say, "Good night." He said, "Oh yeah, you too."
That's funny. I get it. I'm the same way
Yeah,
with my cat, so I get
yeah.
it.
They rule the house. They bother you. You go, "Stop it," and then you love them.
Yep. It's funny. So have any of these relatives or people that you know, have they mentioned anything about the afterlife to you?
Yes, yeah, and I write a little bit about that in my book. My sister Ellen and I were very close. I mean, not only were we sisters, but we were best friends. We talked sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, just hey, what are you, blah, 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 whatever it is, checking in. And we also studied together. We were students together, metaphysically, spiritually. And I have 5 sisters, but she and I were really close. She is the eldest. And then she inconveniently died on me one day. No warning. Except I knew. So I kept saying to her, no, no, something's not right. She kept saying, mind your own business. I'm fine. And she died on me. So she went to the other side, and in time after my horrible grief, because at first you're in terrible grief,
Did your sister know? Do you think she knew
that I was in grief.
that she was going to die?
She knew. I
Yeah.
know she knew.
Yeah.
Maybe because she talked to me in the hospital. She says, they want to put a stent in. Do you think I should do it? And I said, well, give it a chance. She said, really? Will you come up here and see me? Well, she died before I got up there.
Oh,
She had a big uh, seizure and died. But I think she knew. And I think in some ways, as much as her family were devastated, her children, everybody loved her. She was the queen bee in the family. I mean, she was the most beloved relative. You fight with relatives, nobody would dare fight with her. She was the queen bee. Uh, and I think that she was tired. I really do. Big sister to 7 siblings, a mother of 5 children and many grandchildren. I think she was tired. And I think she wanted to join her husband. I think she was done. Anyway, so in time she told me, and this was really hard. So I would call her name and she'd visit once in a while. Everybody was calling her. She couldn't visit everybody. And I would call her name. And then she told me that her name was not her name anymore. And I'm like, well, what am I going to call you? To me, you're this name. That's all I ever know you. And she didn't give me a direct answer. And then in time, she began to tell me about, when you hear that poem, when you look at the stars and you look at the sun and you look at the plants, I am everywhere. I'm in the trees. I'm in the flowers. There's a poem like that. And don't miss me because I'm everywhere. And she began to tell me that you do fragment. You begin to disintegrate. And pretty soon you're every part of the cosmic energy and the universal energy. Now, I have never heard it validated like that. I had studied it and read it. But she told me, like, you are every particle. You are no longer in that human form at all. But you have a memory. You said, like, water has memories. Well, you have a memory of a lifetime. And you have a connection to those that you have memories with. They are not as strong memories. In other words, you're not emotionally attached to that. You can view it from a bird's eye view, so to speak.
Right.
But you fragment, and you're everywhere in the cosmic energy. It was really amazing to me. And she talked about DNA. She gave me information on DNA. I had experience in 1990. I went down, I was in Florida, and I was not asleep. I was kind of daydreaming in the sun and in a picture window. And I found out, I saw DNA, and I never talked about it for 10, 15 years. And then I started talking about it before she passed. Oh no, it was after she had passed. She came back and she told me more about the spirals of DNA and how the cosmic energy, it's just a whole lot. She gave me a whole lot of information that I never had and never read about. And yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
That's that gives you hope, right? That sounds really neat.
Yeah, that when we leave, we are part of the cosmic energy. Like I say to people, I don't give it up to the universe anymore. I am in the universe. What I do is I attract or repel. I attract toward me or I repel certain energy in the universe. I don't give anything up to the universe.
Mm-hmm.
When people say, well, give it up to the universe, I don't do that. And that came to me actually in the last several months. Don't give it up to the universe. You are the universe.
Right.
A lot of strange experience, more than we could talk about here, Dylan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been a fascinating interview, June. Where can we find you and the great work that you do?
Well, you can go to my website, and then from there you can go to everywhere else, YouTube and all of that, my blog, at my name, www.june, like the month, Ahern, AHERN.com, juneahern.com. You can go to, as I said, it has links off to everything else. If you're interested in my book and you want a Kindle book or even paperback or whatever, you can always go to amazon.com, smashwords.com. I'm pretty much out there. You can find me, June Ahern, and you'll get all kinds of different little places to go to.
Excellent. Hey, thanks for being on the show, June.
Thank you, Dylan.
Thanks.
Bye.